man. And this is real. This was on the news. I saw this with my own eyes. And she had to make a quick decision to let one of her sons go so that she can keep holding on to the tree. And the decision was, I'm going to let my older son go because he's already kind of lived his life, and at least I can still hold on to this younger one. And the older son was looking at the mother and just terrified. Mom, don't let me go! Don't let me go! And the mother had to make a quick decision, and she had to let him go. And he just did everything, trying to hold on. Mom, Mom, Mom! And he was gone. And God says that when I gave Jesus up, it was like that. You were like the younger son. I was holding on to you. I had to let Jesus go so that you can live. Because if you try to understand what God was going through that time, you can't. But God says, I'm going to give you these illustrations so that you understand how I felt about giving my son. And this is true. 3 days later, she was reunited with her older son. Jesus was in the grave for 3 days. True story. So you guys know I shared a story about one of my pastors. He's the director for the school that I graduated from. And last year, he accidentally ran over his son, Josiah. His son was 2 years old. Ran him over with his truck. And Pastor Dave was sharing. They actually had the funeral at Redeeming Love Church. And Pastor Dave was sharing. He said he was walking out of the house, opened the garage, and he got into his truck, and his son must have followed him quietly. And he didn't know that his son was following him. So he gets in the truck, and he reversed the car, and by the time he knew it, when he looked in front of his windshield, his son was lying in the driveway, blood everywhere. And Pastor Dave got out of his car, and he ran, and he took Josiah into his arms, blood just everywhere, and he's just like, oh, no, 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 no. No! And his wife came out. He's like, call the cops! Call the cops! Call the cops! And when I got the text message, I went to the hospital. And God spoke to me. God says, when Pastor Dave ran over his child by accident, he ran out there to want to save that little boy. And I felt like that with Jesus, Teng. You have to understand that. I wanted to come to his rescue. When he was being persecuted and mocked and killed, I wanted to come and rescue him, Teng. And I remember I went to the hospital when I received that text message. And little Josiah was completely dead. They had wrapped him in a blanket. And there were about 10, 15 people in there praying with him. And everyone wanted Josiah to be raised from the dead. Pastor Dave had one of the most unique funerals for Josiah. He had the funeral, kicked everybody out, and prayed for Josiah, redeeming love all night long hoping that he would be raised from the dead. Do you know how bad God wanted to raise Jesus from the dead the first day, but couldn't, and had to wait for 3 days? How Pastor Dave wanted Josiah to be raised from the dead, but that wasn't God's will. And Josiah went to be with the Lord. It's great that Christmas, they preach about Mary, they preach about Joseph, the husband of Mary, they preach about the shepherds. But I was like, God, I want to know how you feel when you gave your son. And the only way that he can make me understand was through human understanding of human tragedy. How many of you would give your child as a gift? That's what God did for us. Remember that. God just didn't sit in heaven on his throne and did nothing. Oh, he wanted to save his son. How would you feel if your son was crying out to you and you heard his voice screaming out to you? When Jesus was on the cross, he was crying out, "My Father, my Father." And God wanted to come down and save him so bad. Do you not think that? How much more, if Pastor Dave wanted to save Josiah, how much more would God want to save us and save his son? But because in order for us to be saved, he had to allow Jesus to be crucified. But it wasn't easy for God, our Heavenly Father. It was hard. Most of you guys know my story. When I was living for the devil, when I was living in sin, and my mom came and visited me every time in the jail cell, the county jail, and in the jails. And she wanted me to be saved so bad. We have to want people saved. Christmas is not about just gifts and giving gifts. It's about what God did for us. Celebrating his love. The one he most cherished gave his life away. Let's not forget about how God felt about giving his son, Jesus Christ, for us all.